For the past 2 months, the United States and Iran were maintaining a ceasefire. Hard to believe, considering the amount of missiles and drones that continue to fly past the borders, which, by the standards of this war, is basically peace. But you see, even that very loose definition of peace has an expiry date. The Memorandum of Understanding that was signed between both countries in June, the one holding West Asia together with duct tape and diplomacy, is expiring today. And right now, neither side is saying what happens next. Into the confusion lands a bombshell claim. Former American Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene has claimed that the Trump administration is discussing the possible use of nuclear weapons against Iran. According to her, the plan is being drawn in high-level strategy meetings. Now, it's important to note here that Greene provided no evidence to back these claims. These claims have not been independently verified. And there is no public US government document confirming that Washington is preparing a nuclear strike. But when it comes to Trump's war with Iran, you don't really need proof to cause panic. You just need a platform. Because as it happens, Trump is not dialing down the rhetoric. He has now threatened to blow up Oman if it gets in the way of a deal with Iran. So what happens when a conventional war starts flirting with the unthinkable? Because Tehran presents Washington with two very different problems. One is nuclear, the other is missiles. And confusing the two could have catastrophic consequences. Let's start with the nuclear question. Now, in its 2025 annual threat assessment, America's own intelligence community said Iran was not building a nuclear weapon. A year later, the report took a different tone. It highlighted Iran's growing missile capabilities and its refusal to comply fully with nuclear obligations, including denying access to key facilities. In March, the then US Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, said Iran's enrichment program had been obliterated. She claimed that Tehran has not tried to rebuild its nuclear enrichment program, directly contradicting claims made by Trump. US Secretary of War Pete Hegseth was grilled by US senators last month on this very discrepancy.
You asked me what the overarching objective is, and I would say ensuring Iran never has a nuclear weapon. That's been clear from the president from day one. That's why Midnight Hammer was undertaken, to obliterate their nuclear sites.
You said after Midnight Hammer, and I'm quoting, our bombing campaign obliterated Iran's ability to create nuclear weapons, unquote. Clearly, that is not the case based on your testimony today. It's also a fact that the DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, testified in front of the Intelligence Committee that it was our assessment that Iran did not intend to restart its nuclear program. The President of the United States, just about a week ago, said Iran has committed not to develop a nuclear weapon, which of course is a commitment they've made for many years. We need to enforce that.
So, Iran's enrichment may be crippled, but its missiles very much alive. And this is what's making Israel worried. According to a report by the Jerusalem Post, Israeli military officials were stunned by how quickly Iran managed to rebuild parts of its offensive capabilities following Israeli strikes in October 2024 and June 2025, especially its ballistic missile arsenal. Now, the estimates are striking. Iran reportedly had around 1,300 missiles in June 2025. By the beginning of the recent conflict, that number had reportedly risen to around 2,500. According to the report, Tel Aviv believes Iran has found creative ways to replenish its offensive arsenal, even after suffering major losses in the recent war. So yes, America and its ally Israel have genuine concerns regarding Iran. But does that justify the use of nukes? Remember, before this becomes a debate about legal outcomes, it has to be a human one. Because atomic bombs have been used only twice in warfare, both times by the United States. August 6th and August 9th, 1945. The bombs were dropped in the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, forcing Tokyo into an unconditional surrender and ending the Second World War. Around 110,000 people were killed immediately, with the death toll reaching roughly 214,000 by the end of that year from burns, trauma, radiation-related effects. The suffering did not end when the bombs stopped falling. Radiation sickness followed. Cancer rates rose. Generations lived with the consequences. That is what nuclear option actually means. It's not just a headline, it's a horror. Until now, the message of American military power has essentially been, we can destroy your military capabilities. A nuclear strike would send a much darker message, that America is willing to cross the nuclear threshold to destroy its adversaries. And once that threshold is crossed, every nuclear-armed adversary is going to take note. And countries that do not possess nuclear weapons may draw their own conclusions. Perhaps the only way to guarantee survival against a superpower is to get one. That is how nuclear proliferation accelerates. But could the United States even do it? Under the United Nations Charter, force against another state is banned except through Security Council authorization or self-defense after an armed attack. And even self-defense has rules, necessity, proportionality. But this is where things get confusing. Chemical weapons are banned outright. But nuclear weapons? A gray zone. A gray zone the world never fully closed. The International Court of Justice, in its landmark 1996 advisory opinion, did not declare that nuclear weapons are universally illegal in every conceivable circumstance. But it made something else very clear. Any use of nuclear weapons would still have to comply with international humanitarian law. That means protection of civilians. But how do you guarantee civilian protection when the very nature of the weapon is indiscriminate over an enormous area? The consequences then become uncomplicated. People die. And the geopolitical fallout could be even bigger, which is why Green's claim needs to be treated carefully. Remember, it's still just a claim. There is no evidence. But the bigger issue right now is that the longer this war continues, the more pressure both sides face to find a decisive advantage. Going by how things are escalating right now, it seems Iran has all the leverage because it controls one of the most important waterways in the world, the Strait of Hormuz. America, on the other hand, has overwhelming conventional military power. In other words, both sides have incentives to make the other believe they can go further than they actually intend to. But once the nuclear option enters the conversation, even without being used, it can make the entire war more dangerous. The world has spent 81 years trying to ensure Hiroshima and Nagasaki remain history. Because wars have exits, missiles have trajectories, but nuclear escalation, that is a door with no handle on the other side.
The revolution is made through human beings, but individuals must forge their revolutionary spirit day by day.
Every revolution begins with a question. Why should the world stay the same? One voice rises, then another. An idea becomes a movement. A movement becomes history. 5 revolutionaries, 5 stories of struggle, reform and rebellion. They faced prisons. They faced bullets. They faced empires. But they never stopped fighting. Not for power, for justice, for equality, for freedom. The revolutionary